I'm Martha Freymann Miser, and this is my co-analyst, Shelley Gertzog Cowan. We're here to tell the story of Kirkland's class of 1975, who we were, and how we shaped Kirkland's short, dynamic life. Yay!
Kirkland began as a big idea. In 1961, Hamilton College faced times that were a-changin', impending waves of baby boomers, threats from the Soviet Union, and the rumblings of a cultural revolution. Fewer bright young men wanted to spend 4 years at a small, all-male college in the middle of here. Visionary President Bob McEwen had other concerns: Hamilton's rigid curriculum, an aging faculty, and a social scene that revolved around binge drinking and road trips to Casanova, Skidmore, and Wells. Luckily, Hamilton's need to step it up happened in abundant times. America was ready to invest in higher education. The breakthrough came in a grant from the Ford Foundation, but there was a catch. To get the money, they needed to produce a long-range plan. The stars aligned. Hamilton saw the chance to think big. Their solution was bold. They proposed a cluster of independent coordinate colleges, starting with a college for women. Why women? As Sam Babbitt, Kirkland's one and only president, would say, they believed women with their charms would soothe the savage beast. Now, they also figured that some would have careers, so the curriculum would need a little bit of creative tweaking, but more on that later. The point is, Hamilton imagined the future and said, let's build that college.
Kirkland College was chartered in 1965. The work of creating it fell to President Babbitt and his board, led first by Walter Beinecke and later Fran Musselman, Hamilton men tirelessly dedicated to the Kirkland vision. Kirkland also benefited from the wisdom of women, indomitable women, who served as trustees during its formative years, including Millicent Carey McIntosh, the first president of Barnard College, Annette Baxter, Barnard Professor of Women's History, and Iola Haverstick, a Barnard trustee. As Sam recalled, each fought with fierce determination against the tendency to design women's education around simplistic grounds related to gender. As they worked, ideas about women were changing fast. The pill hit the market. So did the feminine mystique. Whatever Kirkland was to become would be very different than originally imagined. The trustees deliberated, a philosophy emerged. It was built on their understanding of the realities of women's lives, lives that likely would include marriage, children, and careers, lives that would not move in a straight line progression. They landed on a flexible, interdisciplinary curriculum meant to foster lifelong learning so that we could reconfigure our lives over and over. That was the idea of Kirkland. Where was Hamilton in all of this? As Sam recalled, once they turned us loose, they didn't pay too much attention. Kirkland was well down the road before they realized just how innovative it would be. The first class arrived in the fall of 1968. Ours was the fourth to enter. We arrived on a sunny September day in 1971. We made Kirkland complete. Knowing this was our claim to fame, Shelley and I met in the archives of Burke Library on a beautiful day last fall. It wasn't raining today, it was sunny and beautiful. Eager for evidence of our momentous impact. What did we find? A whole lot about the charter class. Us, not so much. Just a single line in the 1971 board notes saying, we completed the product. Ouch. That night, Shelley and I reflected over a bottle of wine. and we got to know each other. Like Kirkland women who have connected over the years, we shared the tapestries of our families and careers, our achievements and contributions, our successes and sorrows. In the process, we discovered we're both middle children, just like Kirkland 75. 3 classes before us, 3 that would graduate after. We felt like the middle kids we were. Nope, not neglected, the good part, self-reliant and scrappy.
Think about it. Parents make a big deal about the first kid's milestones, like learning to ride a bike. The middle kid, Mom says, good for you, go right over to Martha's. So that's what we did. As Susie Lowry says, I knew I was the architect of my Kirkland experience. If it fell short, it was my doing. But back to that September day in 1971, Kirkland was still under construction. As Wake Up Maggie blasted from an open window, we lugged our suitcases into Major, Minor, Macintosh, Root, Keene, and B-Dorm. So, what brought us here? The open curriculum, emphasis on the arts, the idea that Kirkland valued curiosity, creativity, and independence. Heather Brindle-Wolfe speaks for many of us, saying, independent studies suited my independent nature. And no grades. That was a big one. By the time we applied, word was getting out. We heard it from guidance counselors, uncles, family friends, or in my case, guys with girlfriends in the charter class who said, trust me, Kirkland is the place for you. Some from the city liked the idea of a small, open-minded college in a rural area. Some liked the coordinate relationship with Hamilton. Some just liked the vibe. Phyllis Cowan, Marianne Udow, Julie Weinstein, and Catherine Cluett-Belden all grew up with strong, educated, trailblazing moms. Catherine says, I was raised by an entrepreneurial mother who succeeded at each career she chose. It never occurred to me I couldn't do something. Kirkland seemed like the ideal place for me. But my first personal favorite, what Beth Martin said. They had no rules, and I didn't like following rules. We came from public schools, private schools, and boarding schools, from upstate Central and Western New York, from the city and surrounds, and a long swath of the East Coast. A few from out west and a few from abroad, like Toshiko Takuchi from Kobe, Japan. Most of us were from well-educated, upper middle class, or wealthy families. Just under half of us were Jewish. Most of us, 96% to be exact, were white.
We may have looked homogeneous, but we were not. We were young women with a wide range of personalities, life experiences, and emotional needs at a college that was isolated and small. Some of us felt like strangers in a strange land. More than a few mentioned a sophistication divide, especially with those from the city. And here's to our sisters of color, of which there were so few. In his account, Sam often reflects on the unique challenges faced by Black and Latina students, quoting one who said, I know it has been hard. We struggled, but we have to keep moving on in peace. In any case, it took a certain kind of grit to make it. Compared to peer institutions, Kirkland had a high attrition rate, our class included. If Kirkland didn't work out for some, they were gone by sophomore year. Making friends was important. While some found it tough, others fell into instant friendships, like Catherine Livingston Kriegler, who said, I met my best friend my freshman year, and we're still best friends today. We forged bonds through groups like theater, sports, committees, and choir, the Black and Latin Student Union, and SAFO, the support group founded by gay students during our senior year. We debated in the assembly, the hallmark of Kirkland's self-governance, thanks to Maggie Landau, who ran the assembly, and later the first Kirkland Alumni Association. We saw noteworthy speakers, we watched movies. Susan Lewis Kay recalls the auditorium in the old science building where she met her husband Gordon one frigid winter night. The film was Andy Warhol's Trash, which opens with a naked couple dancing. We started exchanging quips and ended up holding hands, she wrote. I remember saying, "You might regret this when the lights go on." We fondly recall waffle ceilings, walk-in closets, and Marimekko prints, big windows and colorful blinds, the art studios in List, the rock swing and late-night peanut butter raids at McEwen. And across the road, Carnegie, the light in Sage Arena, the stacks at the old library, and the chairs upstairs at Bristol where you could look out over the quad.
The great outdoors figured large, riding bikes, cross-country skiing, skinny dipping in the reservoir, walking in Kirkland and Root Glens, the sharpness of the air in winter, and sliding out of dorm windows on plastic trays because there was so much snow. We spent evenings at the pub, Utica Club, 25 cents a beer, and that jukebox be still our tender hearts. Off-campus life included trips to the cider mill, the bakery next to the firehouse, best brownies ever, Don's Rock, and the Shoe. For some, social life included frat parties. Now, I'm pretty sure I never missed a gin and juice. Martha never heard of gin and juice. In our full array, we reveled in our independence, our outspokenness, and our boho style. We were each unique. As Annie Halverson from Kirkland 76 told me, everyone went to her own Kirkland. By our time, deep integration with Hamilton was well underway. Many of us found common ground and lasting friendships, even marriage with guys across the road. And KH75 has lasted. We've planned our reunions together from the start. Still, as Carolyn York says, our memories are different from the guys. There's our shared, chapel, required classes, and of course, Dunham. Most of ours are individual or shared with just a few friends. But in the end, our common thread was music. It was everywhere. In the dorms, we played Joni Mitchell, Stevie Wonder, Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, Jim Croce, The Temptations, The Dead, The Doors, The Beatles, The Stones. Paula Behrens recalls Jerry Jones playing Frank Zappa on repeat for the entire year. We also listened to Judy Collins, Roberta Flack, and of course, Carole King. The folk festival, Fangitos, the music, the weed, concerts by C-Train, Billy Cobham, David Bromberg, Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters, and Loudon Wainwright III, right here in the chapel, so drunk he fell off his stool. At Kirkland, we had the coffee house. Quite a few of us recall the night we packed in tight to hear the feminist folk group Lavender Jane. But the best music and the exclusive distinction of the class of '75 was and is steak night.
Yay!
Jeb, Bobby, Ace, and Don, and often Jeb's brother Jock. We saw you open for Taj Mahal. We danced to you at Bundy and Kaisai, and tonight we'll all be going to Cuba, right over there.
For all the challenges, we seem to have found our friends or enough to get by. Some, maybe most friendships faded over the years. Some of us report still strong bonds. Catherine Cluett Belden and her suitemates started a savings account to help each other out in hard times, and they kept it up. Years later, one used the money for a train ticket to care for another suitemate after her surgery. Others found sisterhood through reunions, reconnecting with old friends, meeting new ones, and finding the joy of sharing our eventful, winding lives with each other. As Julie Weinstein said, the shared experiences and touch points are amazing. Social life aside, we were here for an education, Kirkland style. It stressed flexibility and personal responsibility. Many of us designed our own concentrations, combining separate disciplines into coherent wholes. Political science and philosophy, psychology and English, Asian studies and history, dance and anthropology. And no surprise, our academic journeys ran the gamut. Some arrived with a passion and stuck with it, especially those in creative writing and studio arts. Many of us changed our minds, like Valerie Krall, who said, "I was a math major with an idea that I'd like to be an architect. One math class was enough to make me realize it was the history of architecture that interested me." Or Dr. Becky Johnson, who said, "I thought I would be a music major, but while I loved making music, I found I wasn't really drawn to studying it." For many, the journey was the point. Zipporah Reitman said, "I was curious. I had interests and talents, but there were many fields I'd never explored. I came to Kirkland without a clear academic destination, but once I developed a more specific path, Kirkland's flexibility was so helpful." And Mary Byrne, who said, "My academic journey was simply a matter of following my instincts, finding what was most exciting to me and honing my intellectual abilities." Many of us, like Jane Fisher Hamilton, were hooked from the start. Before Kirkland, she said, "I was a mediocre student. School was something I had to do. My first semester was a sea change. I learned to love learning. I learned to succeed because I wanted to." We also had some amazing off-campus adventures. Tammy Azenson, Joanne Rappaport, and Shelley each spent a semester doing true Margaret Mead-style ethnography. Tammy said, "My time in Sri Lanka shaped my outlook on the world." Other academic journeys, including some bouncing around. Beth Martin and Tracy Stevens transferred out of Kirkland and then transferred back. Catherine Lyons said Kirkland just wasn't the right school for her, that she needed more structure and left feeling totally unprepared. Soon after, she completed a second BA, 2 advanced degrees, and spent 30 years working with HIV and AIDS patients around the globe. Others needed more structure as well. Kirkland alone wasn't enough to fuel their careers. Only a few of us talked about bad faculty advisors, but a lot of us mentioned the all but useless Career Center.
Yet, like Denise Moy, many of us felt ready for the real world. "I attended Kirkland to learn and learn how to learn," she says. "While I had no professional goals, I knew I was prepared for anything." So was Abby Johnson. Abby started as an activist helping to scrap the MX missile in Nevada. But after her son was born, she says, "I cobbled together my management skills, writing abilities, and knowledge of rural communities and nuclear waste into a consulting practice. I found niches and filled them with my skills." Marianne Udow Phillips added this, "Kirkland provided tremendous opportunities for women in leadership. Years later, Michigan's governor appointed her to the state's Public Health Advisory Council." Our academic journeys also took us across the road, right here. Hamilton classes were conventional, but often as challenging and stimulating as those on our side. As Susie Lowry said, "We embraced the friction." Luckily, any friction from Hamilton faculty was mostly gone by our time. Here's what religion professor Jay Williams said when I interviewed him in 2010. "Kirkland students were bright and charming and on to new things. They were not inferior in any way. You taught a group of men, and they were good. They wrote decent papers. You got a few Kirkland students in the room and they asked, 'Well, what about this angle?' 'Well, I never thought about that.' It was a different kind of challenge and I really liked it." That's good timing.
Yeah, very good timing.
We didn't rehearse for this. By our time, fewer Hamilton advisors were discouraging students from taking our courses, and the guys who did quickly learned that Kirkland classes could be plenty tough. We credit Kirkland and Hamilton professors alike for making lasting impacts in our lives. Catherine Livingston Kriegler came here knowing she wanted to write. Bill Rosenfeld helped her see writing as a career. Grant Jones showed Joanne Rappaport she could be a serious researcher, a stimulating teacher, and an inspiring mentor. Other professors who made a difference include Jose Tato, Carol Ruprecht, George Balke, Peter Marcy, David Locke, Sibylla Colby, Bill Hoffa, Fred Wagner, Nadine George, Doug Raybeck, Bruce Muirhead, Bill Salzillo, Jay Williams, and Ed Barrett. He's why I'm a writer. One hallmark of a learning organization is relentless self-examination. True to form, Kirkland engaged in vigorous debates throughout our time about identity, innovation, and coordination. One question kept coming up. We were a college of women, but were we a college for women?
At a 1972 conference, trustee Annette Baxter asked what Kirkland was doing to prepare women for the emotional obstacle course of new opportunities and social pressures we'd soon encounter. That same year, the Middle States accreditation team said Kirkland was not addressing our needs as women, that our curriculum, while innovative, would equally benefit men. As a result, Kirkland's board formed a committee on Kirkland as a college for women, made up of trustees, faculty, administrators, and students. They tackled key issues, brought in gynecological and mental health services, and integrated women's studies into the curriculum. They also learned of the heart-wrenching issues our women professors faced. A scathing 1975 report attributed their 67% turnover rate to an academic model built on male-based expectations and subtle forms of discrimination that led women to feel isolated and excluded by their male colleagues. This begs the question, how did we see ourselves as women? In our senior survey, very few of us said we chose Kirkland because it was a college for women. On the other hand, Sam reported, the longer we were there, the more we seemed to appreciate the special environment that supported us as women. At the same time, the feminist movement was gaining momentum. We claimed our sexual freedom and reproductive rights. We prized our copies of our bodies ourselves. And many recall a life-changing 1973 winter study, Feminism, Past and Present. It led Tracy Stevens to declare Kirkland's first concentration in feminist studies. And it inspired me to write a paper, Why Hamilton is Sexist, which landed me in President J. Martin Caravano's office. Oops, maybe Martin's way is my fault.
But we were a long way from Me Too. We still thought of date rape as not real rape. And professors who dated students, what was that about? Yes, our identities as women were works in progress. But today, most of us credit Kirkland with the belief that we could be or do whatever we wanted. In preparing us to do significant work in the world, Kirkland was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. All the while, a sea change was happening. Vietnam, Roe versus Wade, Watergate, the 1973 recession, remember the gas lines? The heady abundance of the early 60s was long gone, in the country and on the Hill. Fundraising had always been a challenge for Kirkland, and in 1973, it only got harder. As Sam wrote, Kirkland, while still on its feet, was on the brink of having to make some new financial arrangement with Hamilton, and the thought of some kind of redefinition in our status was never very far from my mind.
Here's our take. From the early 60s, when Kirkland was an idea, to the bitter days of 1978, There were men at Hamilton who championed our existence and men who just weren't fans. It depended on which ones were sitting at the table in any given year. As long as those in power appreciated the benefits of coordination and saw Kirkland as co-equals in a mutual, long-term venture, the experiment worked. When both the presidency and board chair of Hamilton were assumed by men who had, frankly, never fully bought into Kirkland, everything shifted. When Kirkland had to ask for money during the recession, it was unsurprising they found an opportunity to shut down the experiment as a matter of efficiency. What might have been an amicable merger between coordinate colleges, a humane ending, was not. Instead, Hamilton cut off negotiations with Kirkland's administration and faculty and seized unilateral control. For some, the wounds have not healed. Many alumni severed ties with the college. Yet for others, the anger faded. They moved on. Today, many embrace Hamilton as alumni, wives, parents, donors, and faculty. And many note the positive ways Hamilton has changed over the years. About a decade after Kirkland was gone, we began to hear, Hamilton is the best of Kirkland. It is. But we are more than a myth, more than a memory. We helped shape Hamilton's DNA, and our spirit remains a living part of the college today.
Yet, we had those years, and what emerged from our breathtakingly innovative pedagogy is a cadre of women whose work is a testimony to that big vision. And even though the early planners held old-fashioned views of our lives and ambitions, they expressed a confidence in our capabilities and futures. And we did them proud. We are artists, entrepreneurs, pediatricians, lawyers, dancers, social workers, activists, architects, therapists, volunteers, writers, and nurses. We're change agents and public servants. We're musicians, cartoonists, filmmakers, sailors, and clergy. And teachers, lots of teachers. We have honors and advanced degrees. We've worked and lived across the globe. And we learned to pivot to factors beyond our control, like the economy, health, or loved ones' needs, or by choice. Many of us completed one career and then moved on to another, often unrelated, because that's what we wanted to do. We shaped our careers just as we shaped our educations, with agency. Agency. We didn't know that word back then, but we've lived it. We are independent, creative learners, women who continue to know the joy of learning.
A half a century ago, we didn't know Kirkland's history would be so brief. After us follow the last three Annalists for Kirkland's 76, 77, and 78. We hold a hope that each will find what we did, evidence of women and men who believed that students should be responsible for their educations and said, let's build that college. That night last fall, when Shelley and I shared a bottle of wine, we joked about our similarity to the Shakers, another community with lofty ideals, always dwindling in numbers, fewer and fewer until, yep. In some respects, the comparison fits. We confront the reality that our memories will go with us. Someday we will be remembered as names etched on glass. And yet, as Natalie Babbitt's everlasting tuck taught us, that's the way humans are designed. Immortality is an illusion and a curse if you actually find yourself there. What we have is more powerful. We have legacy, the people we've loved, the contributions we've made. When Sam greeted the class of 1976, he told them they'd be forever marked as the class that missed the good old days of bulldozers and mud, days we got to taste. But then he said, take it with a grain of salt, because we are not through building by a long shot. And furthermore, the kind of college we want is never static or finished. That's the women we are. We're not static, and so far, we're not finished. We are Kirkland 75, scrappy, smiling, and proud. Thank you.